In the midst of the pandemic, many Asian countries have been scrutinized for having a failed public health response, often because they prioritize the economy over public health. Some countries did not immediately close down their borders, often underreporting the number of cases, in order to keep vital industries open. Other countries' governments continued pushing for laws that were highly contested by stakeholders even before the pandemic. As governments grapple with the magnitude of people's needs, many businesses continue to abuse the rights of their workers and the communities where they operate. One thing is clear: the sustainability of global value chains and environmental protection are critical during the pandemic and, more importantly, after it. These are the demands human rights defenders across Asia, journalists, land, environmental, and labour activists have been making for years and continue to do so daily. These demands have gone unheard, and the pandemic has only resulted to more pressure on defenders and more paralysing restrictions to civic freedoms. Since February, the Asian Forum for Human Rights and Development began recording key trends of violations against HRDs. Trends so far are over 50 cases of violations against HRDs related to COVID-19, affecting nearly 150 HRDs across 14 Asian countries. The Philippines, India, and Nepal were the countries with the highest number of incidents recorded. The most common violation? Judicial harassment against defenders who spoke against the government's response to the outbreak. Most of these defenders were also arrested, putting them at greater risk of being infected while in prison facilities. Secondly, authorities have used and abused newly enacted emergency laws and other measures to intimidate, physically assault, and arbitrarily detain defenders. Who have been most at risk? Journalists and media workers for reporting on irregularities on aid distribution or for sharing unofficial figures on the outbreak. Community-based HRDs, including environmental and land rights defenders, for demanding additional government assistance at the grassroots level or the suspension of extractive activities. Labour rights defenders, for organising in order to demand for aid or support and even for conducting their own relief operations to help fellow workers. In the majority of the cases of violations, state actors were the perpetrators, with police accounting for around half of the cases, followed by central and local governments. Even when businesses were clearly involved, they hid behind a wall of silence and the protection that movement restriction rules offered. We have seen these emblematic cases. On the 18th of April, 2 journalists were attacked by a group of 5 assailants in Nepal. Both suffered physical injuries, had their professional equipment seized, and were assaulted in response of their reporting of the worrisome conditions and poor services offered by a quarantine facility. On the 28th of April, an anti-mining LGBTIQ and community-based defender in Thailand was arrested and interrogated by the police for joining a peaceful demonstration demanding the halt of any mining operations during the lockdown. On the 4th of May, 6 labour rights defenders and union leaders were sentenced to 3 months in jail by a court in Yangon, Myanmar, for leading strikes calling for full wages that allegedly violated COVID-19 orders. At Business and Human Rights Resource Centre, so far we have seen some positive actions by companies and multi-stakeholder initiatives to counter this trend. In Bangladesh, CSOs and local business communities have joined forces for social disaster preparedness and disaster risk reduction. Safaricom Kenya and other local businesses have asked the Kenyan president to publicly apologise for police brutality in enforcing the COVID-19 lockdown. Microsoft made account guard service free for healthcare professionals, humanitarian and human rights organisations, recognising the greater risks of digital attacks. We have also seen some governments create specialised online platforms for consultation on emergency measures, such as in South Korea and some European countries, and oversight bodies open to the public to share views on the measures the government has taken. This is a positive step. On the whole, though, so far it has not been clearly established that civil society will have a seat at the table in defining the post-COVID world. Going forward, governments should strongly reject any business efforts to lower environmental or labour rights regulations in this moment. Companies and investors should publicly commit to protect the rights and freedoms of labour unions, civil society organisations and other HRDs, as their critical allies in efforts to build back all that has been lost to this crisis. If governments and businesses want to build back better, it is critical for them to work on these efforts alongside human rights defenders who must be assured of a free space to exercise their fundamental rights.